All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. I see we now have 40 people on the call, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to our annual Rocket Fund information session hosted by Cleantech San Diego and the Southern California Energy Innovation Network. I am joined by my colleagues today, Marty Turoff, the Executive Director of the Southern California Energy Innovation Network, Jason Anderson and Shannon Bresnahan, who are the President and Vice President of Cleantech San Diego, Martha Carver, our Director of Administration, Natalie Toon, our Scene Program Manager, and of course, our special guest today, Stephanie Yadchinsky. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. We are hosting this as a Zoom meeting so that you all are able to show yourself, ask questions during the Q&A period. With that in mind, though, we do ask that you stay muted for the duration of today's presentation until we have that Q&A period. Of course, you can put your questions in the chat as they arise, and we'll get to them during the Q&A portion. In terms of just a quick agenda for today, Natalie and myself are going to introduce Cleantech San Diego and our Southern California Energy Innovation Network, and that'll be about 10 minutes, and then we'll go right to Stephanie to jump into the meat and to the bulk of today's session, which you all signed up for and which you all are interested in, which is the Rocket Fund. So with that, Natalie, we can go to the next slide. So Cleantech San Diego, for those who don't know us, our mission is to accelerate clean technology innovation and promote the equitable deployment of sustainable solutions across the San Diego region for the benefit of the economy, the environment, and all members of our community. Next slide, Natalie. In terms of how we do it, Cleantech San Diego is a member-based business organization. We have over 120 members across the public, private, academic landscape, and we are all committed to advancing sustainable solutions. We are policy advocates, and we also run a number of programs, one of which is our Southern California Energy Innovation Network, which I'll turn over to Natalie now to give you some background on and explain.
Thanks, Zach. Since its inception in 2016, our SCENE program has grown to be Cleantech San Diego's top strategic initiative. And SCENE was created when we were first awarded a grant by the California Energy Commission, which created a statewide energy innovation ecosystem, which focuses on accelerating the commercialization of breakthrough energy technologies and overall helps California achieve its energy and greenhouse gas reduction targets. And last year, the CEC actually approved follow-on funding for another 5 years, allowing this innovation ecosystem to continue through 2026. And here you can see the main components of this innovation ecosystem, at the center being the 4 startup accelerators that serve different geographical regions of California, which are also supported by CalSeed's non-dilutive grant opportunities and CalTestBed's third-party technology validation programs. Our SCENE program identifies and supports startups in 4 counties, including San Diego, Riverside, San Bernardino, and Imperial counties. And we have 9 subcontracted partnerships with all the entities you see on this slide. And these partnerships are what allow us to support SCENE entrepreneurs with everything from developing their technology roadmap to creating their go-to market strategy and creating their investor pitch decks. Also positioned as a member-based business organization, Cleantech San Diego leverages our wide pool of member companies to form SCENE's Technical Advisory Committee. And we really considered this to be the secret sauce in providing the best possible support to the startups in our program. And in terms of eligibility, startups must have a business office in California, a presence in at least one of the 4 counties that we serve, and must have a breakthrough energy technology. And we're open to startups that range from very early stage with the technology readiness levels ranging across the scale of 1 through 9. But the bottom line with eligibility is that the startups must ultimately deliver benefits to California ratepayers. On this slide, you can see the 5 broad energy technology domains that our program supports. And that includes renewable energy generation, clean transportation, smart grid and energy services, energy efficiency, and energy storage. And here you can see our 30 full active scene members, and they're spread across all 5 technology domains. And these member companies have anywhere from a 2-person team all the way up to 30+ employees. And we find that as long as we can provide value, then we have these startups in our program regardless of their development stage. So with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Zach, who will highlight some of Scene's impact metrics. Oh, sorry, Zach, I think you're muted.
Of course. Well, thanks so much, Natalie. I appreciate that. And I just want to highlight just some of the developments that have happened since some of you joined us for our last Rocket Fund information session last year. So 2021 was a very busy year for us, and I'll start right off with the impact and the numbers here. So since joining the program, Scene portfolio companies have raised just under $250 million in follow-on funding. So that's not total funding, that's just since joining the Scene program. And that was up over 129% from the previous year. Our companies have over 360 employees, and we're currently collecting this year's metrics for January, and we expect that to be well over 400. We have 76% of our Scene companies have diversity at the C-suite level. And this last metric here, our patents, we have had 162 patents approved, and we expect that to go up again this year. And I love that metric because it really is a good kind of proxy for innovation in terms of what's going on with our portfolio companies. A lot of them hold multiple patents, and it's not just one product they're developing, but a suite of technologies. Next slide, please, Natalie. Thank you. So we've had a big announcement last year, and that is that we graduated 3 of our companies. It's a bit bittersweet to say goodbye, but they've done phenomenal. They've grown through our program, and they were ready to kind of take on the next step. So AquaCycle, which have a modular high-strength organic wastewater treatment system, just announced they signed a long-term service contract for a new system with one of the largest global food and beverage companies. Nuvi, which is the leader in the global leader in the vehicle-to-grid technology space, is now trading on the NASDAQ, and they did that via a special purpose acquisition company in a reverse merger. Their ticker is NVVE if you'd like to follow them. And finally, Key2 Systems, which is a communication software company developing smart energy automation platforms, has successfully deployed and scaled smart inverter nodes that comply with California's Rule 21. Next slide. This past November, we conducted our Scene annual showcase event. We had 9 companies that presented who were raising capital. We had over 190 attendees for that event and representatives from 20 different capital groups in the clean tech space. And I know a number of connections were made with those capital providers to our entrepreneurs after that event. Next slide. And just a week after that, the San Diego Innovation Council hosted their annual showcase, which we were heavily involved with. They have a clean tech track, and we had 6 companies presented that. And the keynote speaker for the entire event was one of our very own Scene companies, and that was Nick Halverson, the CEO of OccuSpace. And they have recordings for that as well. And that event had over 250 participants. Next slide. And then finally, the cherry on top for 2021 was that San Diego actually ranked as number 9 in the US in terms of clean tech innovation hubs. So we're really proud of that. They looked at a number of components, including our very own Southern California network, and then some of the other accelerators around, and just the opportunities for clean tech entrepreneurs here in San Diego. Next slide, please, Natalie. And Natalie mentioned CalSeed earlier. We work closely with them. They are part of the innovation ecosystem that the California Energy Commission has created. They do an annual solicitation for $150,000 grants. A number of scene companies have gotten those in the past. We spoke with our contact there, and for this year's solicitation, the applications should open in late March. There is a link that we'll be sending out along with the recording after this event, where you can sign up to their mailing list, and that'll keep you up to date on when that solicitation is going to be released and all the information you need to apply. Next slide. And so with that, it is my pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker, and that is Stephanie Yanchinsky. She is the Director of Entrepreneurial Programs at Caltech's Resnick Sustainability Institute. We have been doing these annual information sessions with Stephanie for a number of years now, the last two virtual, and we always appreciate the time, effort, and passion that she puts into them. So Stephanie, I'm going to turn it over to you. Just let us know when you want to advance the slides, and I'll remind everyone to please stay muted for Stephanie's presentation, and we'll get to your Q&A at the end. Stephanie.
Okay, well, first of all, keynote is very grand. I think that this presentation is going to be a meat and potatoes information session about what the Rocket Fund is all about. Thank you, Zach. So today I'll talk about the Rocket Fund and the special role it plays in funding early stage companies like yours. Touch on some successes. I'll go through the process, and then hopefully there'll be time for Q&A at the end. So what is the Rocket Fund, and why should you consider applying? We like to describe ourselves as fast, flexible, and free. Fast because from application to getting the money is typically about 6 months. Flexible because we follow your strategic goals that you set for using the Rocket Fund. And then free because it's non-equity, it's a grant program. Next slide. So this is our mission. Pretty grand, actually. But we realized a long time ago at our founding in 2015 that we can't really do it alone. So we've assembled a group of experts who as individuals are really committed to making a difference. And this is important from your perspective because honestly, we know that individual technologies, even if they're gazelle technologies, aren't going to do it. We really need a lot of technologies, a lot of different approaches to be able to make a difference actually in the sustainable problems that we face. So within reason, we're prepared to look at anything. So the key to this actually is that we provide money that helps you validate your technology with customers. That means that the money that we provide will help you assemble the data that will convince them that your technology will work in the real world. That's the really secret sauce, if you like, about the Rocket Fund. We really want to be able to, at the end of the Rocket Fund, see that you've been able to connect with your customers. We know that relationship is very hard to build. They regard your technology as risky, as not validated yet. We want you to be able to establish that relationship so that you can be on the pathway actually to having a product that's going to earn you revenue and give you financial sustainability. Next slide. Now this slideshow is a quick overview of the role that we play. So click. So especially these days, it's relatively easy to find startup funding. It used to be from family and friends and credit card, but increasingly there are accelerators out there. There's a lot of competitions. The federal government has a lot of programs that programs that they offer that will provide non-equity funding. And if you're lucky and you're able to apply that money to develop your technology, you can sometimes jump to the next stage. Click. So the next stage actually is bridge funding. It just so happens, normally we click through these, but I can describe it. You can jump to stage number 3, which is bridge funding. That's where the government kicks in innovation centers, especially since they have now small funding opportunities can support you. From that, you can begin seeking equity funding from venture capital and angel investors. And with that, supporting your company, then you can finalize your product, scale it up, and begin serving your customers. The gap is in stage 2. the support funding for validating the prototype, I'll be honest with you, is still relatively hard to find. And we, the Rocket Fund, fund the earliest stage of that. That's when you are moving out of the lab or out of your garage and trying to find the money to build that first minimum commercial prototype. Next slide. Okay, so as I said, we've been around since 2015. We've hosted 7 funding cycles, and we've awarded over $1 million now to 33 companies. So what was the impact of that $1 million plus funding? Next slide. So you can see, in fact, that our awardees have gone on to attract over $100 million in follow-on funding. And I will tell you that this is an underestimate. A lot of our companies, of course, most of them are private about their financing sources. And this is what we've been able to capture. You can see that the largest proportion of that, by the way, was investment. Next slide. So these are some of the companies that have gone on to success. You can actually go on our website and see what their business is about. You'll see in the next slide that some of them, in fact, have gone on and raised money even in a tough time in COVID. Ladiratech and PowerFlex were acquired within actually about 3 years of receiving a rocket fund. Now, there's not a dotted line to that, but we do know that we came in at a vital stage where they were not finding money to be able to demonstrate and pilot their technology, and we were able to help. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, this slide shows you that our companies, in fact, were relatively successful during COVID. There's a cluster at the top, eZinc, Blue Frontier, Yoda Solar, Brimstone, WeaveGrid, that closed major investment rounds. And these ranged actually from just over $2 million, 2.5, right up to 12.5 million. So it can be done, even during tough years like the COVID. Axiom and PowerFlex, Zeal, Flume, Truck Labs, all of these companies were able to actually announce new product offerings, and with that they had secured $1 million plus customer arrangements. Antora Energy, which is a grid scale storage company that we know is going to probably take at least another 5 to 10 years to achieve profitability, but it continues to secure not only investment, but serious California Energy Commission grants. In this case, it was $3 million bridge grant to scale up. And 12, which was formerly Opus 12, has actually achieved a significant milestone in being able to successfully pilot E-Jet. Now, this is a game-changing green aviation fuel, very hard goal that companies are trying to make. And the fact that they've been able to pilot it, it seems that it indicates that the Air Force may be able to support its further commercial development. Next slide. So the Rocket Fund offers staged grants from $25,000 to $75,000. I've already said that they are non-directed. In other words, it's guided by your strategic goals, and it's of course there's no equity attached to this. The reason that we ask it to be staged is because we know that these are relatively small grants in the scale of things, but they are smart. That means that they are meant to be catalytic for you. So sometimes even a $50,000 grant, if it buys, let's say, a special piece of equipment, can be totally transforming for a company that has not been able to secure that kind of support, let's say, from one of the federal grant programs. No intellectual property is shared. We do, like CalSeed and the other programs, we do expect a pretty strong technology basis, so we'll look for plans to file for intellectual property. FAST, I've already mentioned that. From applying in March, you can receive the money by the very latest mid-July. The reporting requirements we try to keep as straightforward and streamlined as possible. We want you to spend most of your time on developing your technology and fulfilling the Rocket Fund milestones that we'll set together. We work closely with utility experts who understand the market and provide access to utility matching funds and testing facilities. And I'm not quite sure where the slide went. There was a slide listing our members, but they include Southern California Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric, SoCal Gas. It includes Sacramento Municipal Utility District, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. So major California utilities. And they not only actually take a look at your technology and assess it throughout the process, but they can connect you to program managers who can take an even deeper interest in what you have to offer. We also have formed channel relationships with IN2 Wells Fargo. That is a channel program, a voucher program that will provide you with money to access the technical expertise at NRO, and also the technical access to the technical facilities that NRO has hosted at their site in Colorado. We also have another channel relationship with Shell Game Changer that operates the same way. It's not these are not public programs. You have to apply through us, but we've had good success at having our companies that we refer accepted into these programs. Next slide. Now, I'm often asked about technology readiness. What we've done is borrowed from the Department of Energy levels for technology readiness. And you can see here that technology 1 through 4 is largely technology development, proof of concept, and typically at the end of TRL 4, you'll end up with a lab scale system that hasn't been tested yet in the real world. If you are already at technology 7, you will have actually completed the demonstration that we propose to fund in an operational environment, and you will actually probably likely have a pre-product that customers are beginning to take an interest in, investors are beginning to come around. So at that point, you're a little bit beyond us. We fund technology 5 to 7. So early system validation, demonstration, and completing the system demonstration in an operational environment. And just to say that we have seen it, but if you're already in early commercial deployment, you are a bit too late for us, but we can help you find other funding opportunities, either through our investor partners or through the grant programs that we are associated with. Next slide. Now, what's new? This year, we've actually divided our ask into tracks, and they're listed here: the integrated resilient grid, decarbonized energy systems, green buildings, and we include actually green materials in that category. Hard to decarbonize, for instance, the ag industry, for instance, cement, steel are still proving challenging actually to decarbonize. Where we actually locate carbon capture and repurposing applications under this header. And this is where renewable methane and CO2 leak detection is really important. Environment is a relatively new one for us. We're going to be looking at, for instance, waste management, which we haven't before, especially converting waste to energy. Air quality monitoring, we haven't spent a lot of time actually focusing on that, but that has become a separate area of interest this year. And water management is always really important. And connected to that, we're really excited at seeing some of the precision agriculture innovations that are coming along, both on the software and on the hardware side. And then lastly, the moonshot. Well, the Rocket Fund has always prided itself on being on the bleeding edge, if you like, of innovation. So for instance, we supported our carbon dioxide sequestration and repurposing 5 years before anybody else actually took an active interest in it. That was when we supported Opus 12. We supported Antora Energy as a grid scale storage technology, knowing full well that the technology is not going to be profitable for quite a few years. So we decided to include the moonshot to incorporate any of those technologies that don't fit into any of the other categories to ensure that we get to see those. Next slide. Okay, this gives you an overview of the process. So we've opened in November the 17th. We're on our big push actually towards the the deadline for application, which is March the 4th this year. It's a 3-stage process, which I'll detail in a moment. I've already mentioned that the time frame is about 6 months. It operates like any grant. So we'll sit down after you get an award and set milestones against the payments. But as I've already said, the reporting requirements are kept very streamlined. We're more anxious that within the 12 months that we expect you to be able to complete your Rocket Fund award, that you just simply move on from milestone to milestone. We do welcome multiple applications, not in the same year, but I've already checked our UNoodle site and I see that there's some applications that are repeats. We do expect to see significant progress from your last application. Next slide. So, stage 1. What do we look for? You will be applying through our online UNoodle platform. We think that the application form is actually fairly straightforward. It asks questions that you're asked many times actually as you grow the company. I would estimate that you can fill it out probably in a couple of hours. When we ask for third-party validated technology, we would like to see maybe published papers, your own data, perhaps data from validated test labs. That means labs that are the gold standard in your sector. Or it could be actually customer validation or potential customer validation. The competitive value proposition. I find a lot of companies are very hesitant to talk about the competition out there, either the companies that are already in the marketplace or those that are coming along. You can be certain that on our expert committee that evaluates your technology, there will be at least one individual that is very familiar with the competitive landscape in your sector. So we encourage you to address that issue up front and say how your technology is going to be innovative, how it's going to be able to carve out your own value proposition and your own niche in the marketplace. I'm often asked about market size. Does it have to be $1 billion? Well, we expect some assessment of the total addressable market and the specific addressable market that shows that there is some sizable marketplace for the technology that you are proposing. But we really want to see that you understand who will be your early adopters, early customer adopters, and how you will get to that beachhead market that will allow you to develop your minimum viable product. That is where the Rocket Fund is meant to play its role. We absolutely have to see that you not only have identified these customers, but that you have a demonstration site maybe lined up at the time of application, but we understand that sometimes this can take time, that negotiations can stretch out, particularly with COVID, that there's some twists and turns. So as long as by the time that you receive the award, which this year will be in June, that you are in serious discussions with the potential site that will be likely closed within a few months. And I've already mentioned the stage use of rocket funds. It's important to be able to include that. I find some companies skip over it, don't. That's almost automatic elimination. Okay, next slide. Seems, okay. Stage 2, semifinals. So if you make it through the initial screening, you'll go into the semifinal round where you'll be asked to fill out a more complete due diligence form. And what it is a more in-depth description of the information that you've already been asked to provide in the application form. So for instance, under technology development, you're going to be asked to provide some information about how it works. And I would encourage everybody not to provide a very long, detailed explanation, but more focus on the data that shows that it works and how it's going to be innovative. We do expect to see that there is an innovation edge with maybe IP filed, a provisional IP is fine, or that at least that there are plans for filing IP. and that you understand the next steps for development, one of which we assume the Rocket Fund is going to help. On the manufacturing process, we don't expect you to have worked it out in detail, but to, again, be able to lay out at least a first understanding of how the process would work. Would you, for instance, be needing to outsource some of the manufacturing, that you understand the supply chain, and also what it will take to scale it up to full production to be able to sell it at a price that people are willing to pay. I've already mentioned how important the customer industry partners are to this application. But in this application form, at this stage, you will have to be able to describe the market channels that you're going to use in order to reach your customer, and emphasize throughout your whole application the customer problem or need that is being addressed. That's really important, that we understand that you understand the value proposition that your technology will be addressing. The cost projections and competitive assignment I already talked about, market size and market share. Now, impact. We know that impact is often difficult to measure and may take years to quantify. So this, again, is more evidence. We're looking for evidence that you've actually worked it into your business model and that you are taking it seriously enough to be able to quantify it at some future point. So it could be, for instance, impact on energy use. It could be impact on greenhouse gases, on water use, for instance, because of course in California and elsewhere, drought is still a major problem. What is new is the last section that we look at, and that is a significant amount of the score is going to be dedicated to diversity in your company leadership, diversity in how you look at the benefits that your technology and the eventual product is going to give to, in particular, the underserved communities in California. And if you have some questions about how to describe this, I know sometimes it's difficult, don't hesitate to get in touch with us as you put together your application. Next slide. Okay, stage 3. This is after you submitted your due diligence report, it will be reviewed by our technology advisory committee, which consists of 20 to 30 experts drawn from certainly the utility partners that we have, from EPRI, from investors, from government agencies. We have experts from NRO and from RPE that also help us in our assessment. And we also have had private investors who are successful entrepreneurs in their own right and can help us assess the business model of the companies that we're seeing. So if you get through that stage, then you will be on to stage 3, which is going to be the presentation phase of the Rocket Fund. This will be held over 2 days, 2 mornings actually, and this year, unfortunately, still has to be held virtually. And you will be given a certain amount of time to do a formal pitch. And we expect all of your team to be presented. And because we have a fair familiarity now with your technology, a bit of familiarity about the path to commercialization, and some information about the use of funds that will be detailed in the due diligence report, we really focus on the validation technology and the performance data that shows that our money, in fact, will be well spent on technology that can move forward. Clearly articulated customer and market focus, but in our case, at the pitch, in the pitch, we'll expect a descriptor of the plan of attack. We'll expect more information about the plans for field trials with customers and who they will be. I've already talked about the use of funds that will be staged in these tranches. And I will say here what we pay for. Again, there was a slide that included detailed what we pay for, but you can find it on our website. It pays for things that other grant programs won't pay for. So for instance, equipment purchase. It pays for designing, building, iterating, and installing your prototype. It pays for consulting services. often it's difficult to understand how the product has to be engineered to be able to scale up. Sometimes just understanding the manufacturing process itself is challenging for new technology. So we provide consulting services that can help with that. We provide money for certification. Increasingly, customers and investors expect that to be done. Even by early stage companies, we know it can be expensive. It can cost a good deal of money. So we provide at least a start to that certification process. And then the ask. In addition to the specific areas that we fund, and I would encourage you to really familiarize yourself with it and orientate your ask around that. Don't hesitate to say that you're seeking, for instance, utility technical support or advice, maybe access to testing facilities or connections to potential customers or investors. Those are additional ways that we can help. Next slide. So this gives you an idea of the timetable for this year. Applications close at midnight on November the 4th. I've mentioned the initial screening round. The Technology Review Committee this year is meeting on the 28th of April. You'll be given about 2 weeks in order to fill out the due diligence form. The finals will happen on May the 31st in the morning and June the 1st. And we typically make a decision actually on the second day of the final presentations. So the decision making is very quick. We then go into some negotiations with the awardees, and basically those are to set the agreed milestones that the Rocket Fund will be set against. And it sort of is a level setting exercise to make sure we're all on the same page about what performance milestones you are expected to reach. And then after that is completed, then we can release the money. And as I said earlier, you get it in one payment, and typically Caltech happens to be very fast at paying. It will reach you typically by the 3rd week of July. Next slide. So this is an invitation to apply and to refer others if you know people, in fact, companies that would fit what this can offer. And then next slide. And these are the useful contacts. And one way that we are different is that we are quite ready to answer your questions about applications, how to shape your application in the best way to get through that first screening stage. The biggest frustration that we have as a group is that when we see that there's a candidate that has really great promise, either in technology or in the business, but doesn't really understand quite the focus of the Rocket Fund in comparison to other grant programs, is maybe incomplete in how they answer the questions, or perhaps doesn't quite understand what information is asked for. We're absolutely prepared to help anybody shape their application over the next 6 weeks. So with that, I'll say thank you and then open it up for Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for that great overview, and we always appreciate it. For the Q&A, what we will have you do is you can put your questions in the chat. Alternatively, you can use the raise hand function, which you'll find on your Zoom bar, either at the bottom or top of your screen under reactions. It's a smiley face, so you click on that, click raise hand. And what we'll do is we'll call on you, ask you to introduce yourself and the name of your company or organization. And we'll get to the questions in the order that they come up. So I see Marty's actually got his hand up first. So Marty, go ahead.
Hi, Zach. Hi, Stephanie. I actually see one question in the chat that and I'm going to paraphrase it a different way, but just for calibration's sake for the audience, can you walk us through what the selection funnel was kind of like last year? Last year is a good example. How many eligible companies were there? How many made it to semifinals? How many made it to finals? And how many awards were given last year? And how many awards are planned for this year?
Sure. So we had close to 200 applications last year. In the initial screening, we reduced that number to just a bit over 100, actually. I believe it was 104 that were asked to prepare due diligence forms for the semifinal stage. So those are the ones that were reviewed. Then from that, we were able to whittle it down to 21 companies that were invited to present at the finals. And of that, we made 7 awards. It's unknown how many applications we'll get this year, but that's typically the flow. That's how it works. We try to include as many technologies that look promising as possible, even if their application isn't perfect. So as I said, the initial screening actually focuses mostly on stage of development. You may be too early or too late, and the scope of your technology, whether it fits with the areas that we are supporting. So this year, we've been a little bit more specific with our tracks, and that should make that decision easier.
Great, thanks, Stephanie. Now, I do see some questions coming up from the chat, and I don't see any hands raised. So I'm going to go in the order which I see them. So we do have a question from VG Thomas, and that is, what is your confidentiality policy, and who gets to see the application once it's filed? Great
question. We don't sign non-disclosure agreements, but your material will be seen only by the Rocket Fund management and the Technology Advisory Committee and review panel that have to assess your business. So it's confined to that.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Mukul. I see you have your hand raised, so please feel free to unmute, turn on your video, and introduce yourself and the organization you're with.
Hi, this is Mukul Patel. Can you see me? I opened my video.
We just see yellow, so there might be something covering it.
Oh, I see. How's that now?
We still can't see, but feel free to go ahead and ask your question.
There.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
All right. I'm innovative from a long time and heavily involved in power, like the transportation, energy sector, and the power plants, and the pharmaceutical and biomedicals. But now I have developed a double encapsulated plastic laminated solar panels, which is a heavily impact resistance and the rain and the storm resistance. You can deliberately throw a rock on it or put it in the water, making flooding. And it is patent, and I'm at the production level to produce that one on a large scale. And I have sourced it out to prefabricated outsourcing and my transportation, and I'm trying to put it into encapsulation in a local price so I can generate some jobs and revenues. And this is a portable that it can go on trucks or a camper or trailer, or even in the cabins and off-grid applications. And especially this is the beauty is I try to put it in a encapsulate that it can be portable where there's a blackouts, that the grid is down because of hurricane or hailstorms. This FEMA can take it and put it in an hours and put the grid back on the operation until they fix the problem. So that's I like to bring it to the next level to get it validated to the validation OSHA or whatever regulatory affairs are, and try to put it in action so I can have a large benefits to the community and other people. So I need your support to where we can go from here.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we tend to draw a line at technologies that are at the stage that you've obviously developed your technology already, because we're really about funding the earlier risky stages of technology development and validation. And it seems to me that you actually might need a sizable financial support. And there are state funds out there available for supporting pre-production and scale up, and then even scaling up production of the product once it's on the marketplace. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but they're offered by the California Energy Commission. And if you go on the California Energy Commission website, type in EPIC, EPIC, you'll see that they offer 2 funding opportunities once a year, Bridge and Ramp, and they fund specifically the kind of money that you're looking for. Also, the Department of Energy offers periodically SBIR grants. Again, that's another opportunity for you to be able to validate your technology. And that would be another source that I would look to.
Thank you. Because I already did my upfront assessment with the local electric company, and I did a small presentation with the trade show, and they say I should not have any problem to get it validated, and it's so reliable and energy cost effective. Like for front end, if you making a glass panel compared to plastic, the big delta of the temperature rising to bring the silica to 2000 degrees to melt to a sap to the glass versus this plastic is a waste plastic, bring it up to the 400 degrees to make a sap and roll over and make a panel out of that. That's a big upfront cost difference. Plus, it's a weight difference. So the 5-pound weight, full-size panel compared to 50-pound weight.
Cool. Thank you very much, Rex. I'm actually going to cut you off there, and I appreciate the explanation of the technology. We just do have a number of questions in the chat that I do want to get to. So we're going to go next. I see a question in the chat from Amit, and Amit says that we're a member of LACI and have some provisional patents pending, but aren't a hard tech company, but seem like we would meet many of the requirements of the Rocket Fund. So, you know, if your technology isn't primarily hard tech, is it still a good potential fit for Rocket Fund, Stephanie?
Yes, we do support software companies. We have in the past. I don't know what your technology is about, but that is certainly acceptable.
Thank you very much. And then I see one more question in the chat, then we'll get to Marty. I see from Eric Thompson with Windscape.ai. He says, I do see a zero carbon electricity generation in track 1, but just to clarify, can technologies that is not specifically generation, but enables more generation from wind farms eligible?
Absolutely. Yep, we look for those. Yep.
Fantastic. And Marty, we can go back to you.
Before we answer the next question, just raised by the company that's at LACI, the one thing I do want to emphasize is that we do need to see some innovation. So the one thing that we don't support is simply expanding the marketplace, let's say. It's just, we're about supporting the development of technology or or supporting the development of an innovation application of some technology.
Thanks, Stephanie. I don't see any other questions in the chat right now, so Marty, we can go to you.
Okay, thanks again. So Stephanie, the question I've got now is just related to the 5 tracks. Is that, are the designation of these tracks more for your benefit internally in terms of how you're going to review the applications that come in, or are you actually going to divide the awards for this year to be distributed, you know, to make sure there are some within each of those tracks?
Yes, our intention is to provide at least 1 award for each track. But it is at the discretion of the final review panel whether that will play out. Obviously, if, for instance, in one track we receive no applications, or we receive applications that don't compete, if you like, with applications in the other tracks, then we reserve the right to be able to maybe not award in that particular track. But the intention is to have 1 award for each track.
Thanks, Stephanie. I don't see any other additional questions in the chat. You know, if you have a question, we do encourage you to raise your hand. You know, we'll do one. Give one last call for questions. Okay, and I see one coming in from Rayleon Energy, and I see our second use battery technologies eligible, specifically energy storage systems utilizing retired EV batteries.
Absolutely. Yep. Again, that's a major strategic goal actually for California, is to find a way to repurpose batteries. And we'd welcome technologies that do it with some, obviously with some innovation.
Of course. Marty?
Thanks, Zach. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just wanted to make one closing remark on behalf of our SEEN incubator here at Cleantech San Diego. I know everybody who's called in today specifically is obviously interested in securing the grant funding through the Rocket Fund application. But if you are a startup company in San Diego, Imperial, Riverside, or San Bernardino County, or if you have a key validation trial in one of those 4 counties, and perhaps you may even be earlier stage than Rocket Fund or later stage than Rocket Fund, we would encourage you to contact Natalie, Zach, and me and explore the viability of your potentially becoming a member of our incubator for the other services that we can afford. So we look forward to meeting any new companies that we're not aware of who have joined us today through the Rocket Fund.
Marty, there were a couple more questions. Zach?
Yeah, I see a couple more questions coming to the chat that we'll get to. So Jonathan Knight of Uprise Energy asks, can the Rocket Fund grants be used in conjunction with other funds to achieve milestones, or should the effort be isolated to just the award from the Rocket Fund? And that's a great question.
It is a great question. We welcome funding from other sources, whether it's CalSeed. We work particularly with CalSeed and CalTestBed. We pay special attention to those companies, I should say. We have a cap on investment, by the way, of $3 million by the time you apply. So if you're seeking investment and you happen to secure an award after you start the process, no problem. Your application will go forward. The one thing I would say, though, is that we will look for you to be able to carve out a project where the Rocket Fund within that funding universe will be catalytic for you. So we don't provide matching funds, for instance, for other grant programs.
Thank you. And I see John Carreri asks, would indoor air quality tech be considered under environment or track 2? They have a COVID-19 airborne deactivation technology.
Yes, I would guess that would be the most logical place for you to apply.
Great, thanks, Stephanie. And I see Mukul has raised his hand again. I will ask that you keep it short, Mukul, just as we are coming towards the end of time. Go ahead.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm also developing a portable flywheel, which is a constant energy harvesting to minimize the electric battery usage. So the flywheel will be retrofit to continuous the power.
Interesting.
Thanks, Mukul.
Yeah.
So I don't see any other questions in the chat. We have just about 4 minutes left. So I'll give kind of 20 seconds here for last questions. Raise your hand. We'll do a lightning round. And if not, we can end it there. I will ask Natalie, if you could pull up the contact info for our SEEN incubator, that would be great. So anyone, and we'll send this out after in a follow-up email along with the recording and the slides from today. So if anyone is interested in learning more about our Southern California Energy Innovation Network, we're Cleantech San Diego. Please contact Marty, Natalie, or myself. Okay, and I don't see any other hands raised or any other questions in the chat. So with that, I want to say thank you very much, Stephanie. We always appreciate you doing these webinars, and they provide such a great benefit to not just our SEEN startups, but all these startups in California who are looking for that kind of stepping stone via non-dilutive funding that's going to really help commercialize their technology. So with that, I'll say goodbye. Thank you very much, everyone, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.